Thank you to our dad's class. Thanks for coming back and trusting us as well. But it's really trusting Connie here. I will do whatever I can to get my sister to come down from Cache Valley and share all of her knowledge. And this is Connie. She is just a few years younger than I am. We won't go into like details. Because I like to consider myself, she's a twin, and I like to consider myself the honorary triplet. We have a pretty good time together, us as sisters, and so it's fun to be able to create and do things in the kitchen. And celebrating with treats this time of year is really one of our favorite things to do. It gets hectic, it's crazy. I know all of our lives with parties and gatherings and just getting ready for Christmas, it feels like I have this great list of things that I'm going to do, and then the days get shorter and shorter, and my list gets shorter and shorter, and I like have really great intentions. And there's been many years where I've made holiday treats, and then I never deliver them. Has anyone else done that? Yes, right. And my husband's like, "Can you please stop? I feel so bad when they're just sitting here." And I'm like, "But the intentions were there." And so we wanted to find some really quick and easy yet so delicious recipes that you guys could do, because we know that life right now is crazy and we're all in a time crunch, but we celebrate with our hearts and with food, and so we thought, let's do this together. So Connie's going to give you some really great recipes, but then hopefully inspire you with some new tricks that you can just like open your eyes to some new things out there. And today's recipe has peanut butter, which I love peanut butter. So yeah, hopefully there's no peanut allergy.
We couldn't pull you all beforehand to find out. So.
But we're going to try some new things and get you ready for the holidays. So Connie, thanks for coming to share your ideas. And I love listening to her teach. She's a teacher by profession, but it's fun how she's taken this and shared us within the kitchen. So Connie, it's all you.
Okay, here we go. How many of you, this is your first chocolate extravaganza class? Oh, class, like this is the first time you've been in this room this year. Okay, a few of you. How many of you have been in this room all day? Okay. How many of you have been in this room all weekend? Yes. Awesome. Good. Okay. So I'm first of all, thank you, Heather, for the introduction, and I really enjoy being able to come back and teach. I don't work in the store anymore at any capacity other than this, and so it feels like a gift for me. Thank you, Carlo. It feels like a gift for me to be able to show up and just share some of the things that I love about Gigi. Of course, it's in my family, but also there's just so many people that I've met through doing classes and through learning together. And what unites us more than the joy of eating? I feel like it combines so many things that we all love, and especially when we cover things in chocolate, right? Yeah. So, like Heather said, I want to talk to you a little bit about some simple things that you can do treat-wise that maybe you can share with other people or make for yourself. There's no judgment who these are for. So I want to point you to the back of your page first. We're going to talk about a bunch of those things. All of these recipes are on our blog. So if you've never visited Gigi's blog before, we have spent a lot of time making those recipes and adding videos to make the things that we do hopefully accessible. We want to encourage you. We want to do, we basically like want to be invited into your kitchen. So if anyone wants to like hang out with us, we'll come hang out with you. But if you don't, we have a lot of stuff on our blog that you can take into your kitchen as well. And other than like actually literally holding your hand, we want to figuratively hold your hand and do these things with you. So I'll show like some of the recipes that we're going to do up here are on the back there, and you can search those. Just Google's our best friend, right? Google your way through the Gigi blog and find some things that like speak to you, because the joy is in eating, but it's also in the creation. And like Heather said, we can get busy, life can get hectic and crazy, but it also feels really good to be able to slow down sometimes and just enjoy the moment and enjoy what we're doing. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for trusting us as a company and, you know, as a group of people all together. It's really cool to be able to experience this together. So the recipe that I'm sharing today, back on the front, I kind of adapted it from a peanut butter truffle that I really love. You can use this same technique and make truffles themselves. So you'll make like a peanut butter center and then coat these in chocolate. But to be honest, they take a lot more time to make. And so I thought, how can we take something that's tasty and delicious that I really love, keep a lot of the flavor and the goodness about it, but make it even simpler. Something that's easy and is done in like an afternoon, so you can get to sharing and doing other parts of your holiday traditions. Or I mean, you can make these in February or July, whatever you want, right? The other thing that I like about this recipe is we can use any chocolate. So we're going to add peanut butter to all of the layers. So what that does is help to kind of emulsify the chocolate with the peanut butter, so I don't have to temper it. So just kind of to gauge our audience, raise your hand if you know the difference between compound and couverture chocolate. Oh good, a lot of you. Okay, awesome. And then who knows the difference between compound and a chocolate chip? Okay, awesome. So I'll just do like a quick run through, and if you have more questions about it, or you're like, what language is this woman talking? I thought this was in English. I would be happy to answer any questions, or again, you can refer to the blog. We have a lot of posts like describing the difference between chocolate. So chocolate, it's natural, it's of the earth, right? So you can include it in like your daily vegetables or something. When chocolate is harvested, they take the cocoa bean, they're gonna grind it up and separate chocolate into different products. So you have your cocoa solid, and then you have your cocoa fat, which is cocoa butter, right? And some of you are like, yeah, I've been like tempering all weekend, and we've had a lot of practice with this. So cocoa butter is gonna be a really creamy fat. It's a really hard cocoa, or like a hard fat, I guess is the right word for it. And the reason why we love cocoa butter is because it has a good flavor, right? And so couverture chocolate uses the cocoa solid and the original cocoa butter, and you're gonna get like a really nice texture and taste. But because of the nature of cocoa butter, it requires a process called tempering, which is going to stabilize the cocoa butter. And that helps it to harden again, so you get that nice snap and an even color and sheen to it. And it really is going to give you the best flavor. So we love couverture chocolate for a lot of uses, but sometimes people are like, I don't want to like take that extra step and use the good flavor, so they'll use other products. With this recipe, you can use couverture, and we don't need to temper it because we're going to mix it with peanut butter. So that's going to take the tempering step right out of it, which is kind of a plus, right? But you can also, if you don't have couverture chocolate, you can also use compound, or you can use baking chips. So any chocolate that you want to use, the world is yours, right? You can make it happen. So what we did for our sample and what I'll demo today is, first I melted a couverture chocolate, and I like to just melt in the microwave. That's my preferred method. We did this, we didn't have a ton of chocolate in here. This was just a half a cup. So when you're melting in the microwave, a few things to keep in mind is the temperature of your microwave, like how powerful it is. If you know that it tends to scorch stuff. Has anyone burned chocolate before? Yeah, it's like so sad. We can just have a moment of silence for all the bowls of burned chocolate that are really unsalvageable, right? So know your microwave. If your microwave is really powerful, reduce the heat a little bit, especially if you're only melting a little bit of chocolate. Another tip is to use silicone or plastic bowls so that you don't end up with hot spots like you do with glass or ceramic. So silicone is not going to heat like glass or ceramic will. So there's some advantages. Yeah?
Can I ask one question about the silicone bowl?
Mm-hmm.
I love that for melting, but I feel like it collects cocoa butter crystals and it's harder to clean. Can you give some direction on how to clean them?
Yeah. So I mean, I just put mine in the dishwasher at home. If you're noticing that it's not getting all of the cocoa butter off, it kind of leaves like a little bit of a white film. Is that what you're seeing? Yeah. Then just wash it in really hot water with dish soap. Yeah. So if the dishwasher is not strong enough to get it all off, yeah, I'll just like as hot as your water heater will let it go, and that usually helps to melt it off. Yeah. Has anyone else experienced that? No. Some? Okay. So yeah, this is couverture chocolate, and I did dark today just because I was in a dark mood, I guess. I don't know why. But you can do milk. You could do the same recipe with white chocolate. Another option is to mix it with like cookie butter. You could incorporate that as well, or almond butter. So it's really versatile. Just because we did dark chocolate with peanut butter today, don't feel like that is what you would have to do. So I've got my dark chocolate melted, and then I'm going to add in a third cup of peanut butter. And then just stir that really well. I prefer to melt the chocolate first and then add the peanut butter in. You can melt the peanut butter with it. It's totally up to you. I'm gonna need to microwave that for just another second, just so we can spread it out nice and evenly. The other fun thing is that you can do it with chunky or creamy peanut butter. I will say that a natural peanut butter tends to have more oil. It just seems kind of runnier. So I usually try to do something that's like a no stir. If you're familiar with like the Adams brand where it kind of separates, that can be kind of runny. But you can also play with the ratios as well. So if you want your truffle layers to be a little more firm, just add less peanut butter and they'll harden better. I like them soft because I just want it to just be like a truly luxurious moment in my mouth. But if you want it a little more stiff, then just add less peanut butter. So once I have that nice and melted, I'm just going to, this is an important step, line your pan with parchment paper. It's gonna make cleanup, and we're gonna cut our truffle bars right out of this on the parchment paper. So I'm just gonna spread this here. This is an easy recipe to just do half of if you just need a little bit, or you can double it, triple it, quadruple it, whatever you wanna do.
Is that a quarter sheet?
This is a quarter sheet, yeah. And I like, in this application, I like to have my parchment paper come over the edges just so that it's easy to remove from the pan when I'm finished. You can also, the recipe instructions have you make it in an 8x8 pan, which would spread to all the sides. Today I'm just gonna kind of put it in the middle. I'm not gonna take it all the way to the edges. Now, another reason why we wanted to teach this today is because this is the same method you're going to do if you make like a chocolate bark or what is the word? Peppermint bark. If you wanted to do peppermint bark, you can just spread your chocolate right on the bottom, just like this. And then one of the tricks, has anyone made bark before? Yeah. So one thing that we have found is kind of a struggle with bark is getting your two layers to stay stuck together. Sometimes they separate out, yeah. One thing that I found that's been really helpful is to make sure that my bottom layer, it doesn't get too cold. If the cocoa solids and the cocoa butter harden all the way, it's really hard for that next layer to adhere to the bottom layer. So like, you know, with a lot of things, you can like chill it really quickly, put this in the fridge or the freezer even, and like cool it down really fast. The risk with that is that if it hardens too much, the next layer really doesn't stick very well. So I usually try to just leave it on the counter and just let it set on its own. Because we added the peanut butter to it, it's not gonna get super hard. So don't wait for it to be like hard as a rock before you add your next layer. We want it to be hardened enough that they don't blend together and make like a big melty mess, right? But not so hard that they don't stick together again, okay? So I'm just gonna leave that there. One option is to cool down your kitchen. So like if you know you're gonna be making a lot of chocolates, especially if you're tempering, the tempering process can be kind of tricky with getting your temperatures just right. So as you're tempering your chocolate and then you dip all of your chocolates and you have them sitting on the counter and you have a really warm kitchen, the amount of time it takes for your chocolate to harden can cause your chocolate to come out of temper. So if you're worried about that, and if that's something that you've experienced in the past, and it's luckily we live in like the frigid Utah, right? This time of year, open your windows, get some cold air in your kitchen and allow some air to circulate, like turn on a fan or do something so that your chocolate will set up better. Does anybody do that at home? Can anyone speak to that? Yeah. So you might need to warm your other members of your household to like bundle up when it's chocolate time so that everybody is prepared with whatever, you know, thick socks or blankets they might need. But that's what I do is I'll just cool down my kitchen so it's like a nice 60 degrees or even a little colder. The reason why, so chocolate doesn't like a really sharp temperature change. So if you're taking your chocolate, you're in like a 70-degree kitchen and you're putting it in the fridge, that's where a lot of chocolate bloom happens. And chocolate bloom isn't bad. Like your chocolate isn't spoiled, it's not rotten. Some people are like, my chocolate's moldy, it has like white spots all over it. That's just the fat coming to the surface. Oh, I have this bag. Oh, I'll show you on this. I personally, I'm gonna go down a tangent for a minute because I personally think that chocolate bloom is so pretty. It's really cool. And if you want to like go down a rabbit hole with me, if you just like Google chocolate bloom pictures, manufacturers, when they make their chocolate, they intentionally like pour it out on a big sheet and they want to see the bloom. They want to see what their bloom looks like because then they know that it's manufactured correctly. And so there's like some really cool, I don't know, it's like psychedelic almost patterns happening on the top of chocolate. And I think it's really cool because you're seeing all the layers of the chocolate. So this is the compound chocolate, but you can even see, we've had people return chocolate like this before. I don't know if you can really tell. Where's my hand? Probably not. But this has like a lot of white on the outside. Yeah, can you see that? So we've had people bring this back like, my chocolate's bad, what do I do? This is not bad. This just means that it was unstable enough that the fat in the chocolate kind of comes to the surface. So all you have to do is remelt that and then you can keep using it. Okay, so don't throw out, if you have like cloudy looking chocolate, taste it, make sure it tastes good, but then don't throw it away, just melt it and keep using it. And the other thing about chocolate is it does keep for a long time, especially if it has a lot of sugar in it. That's going to be a natural preservative. So if you have chocolate that you bought a year or two ago, taste it, make sure it tastes good. The texture will sometimes be compromised. So if you melt it and it's like kind of lumpy and it's not working well for you, that might just be the sign of its age, right? Some ways to save that is like to do a recipe like this, adding another ingredient to it, like cream or peanut butter, can help to kind of smooth that out and then you don't notice the texture as much. But I'm an advocate of saving all the chocolate that you can. Don't throw it out if you don't have to. Yes. So then here's our next layer. We just melted some peanut butter chips. You could do the same thing with like butterscotch chips. We have a lot of flavored chocolate out there. There's like a cream cheese flavor, salted caramel. You could, same application, melt your chocolate, add a little something to it. So we're gonna add some more peanut butter to the peanut butter chips. This is gonna make it a really smooth and creamy center.
Did you say you have cream cheese chocolate chips?
We used to. Do we still? I don't know. Does anyone work here? I don't really work here anymore. We used to. Yeah, they were cream cheese flavored. Anyone seen them? Can anyone speak to that? No? I'll find out for you, okay? So this is the truffle center. That was the original peanut butter truffle that we made. So if you want to try that method and then you can really get a nice thick peanut butter center, you would just do the same step, melt your peanut butter chips with peanut butter, and then you pour it in a pan and let it harden and then cut it into squares and dip it in chocolate. So this is like elevated Reese's peanut butter cup. Yeah, you feel me? Yeah. Another fun thing is you could do this in like an actual chocolate mold and make peanut butter cups. So same technique, and pour your chocolate into the molds. Another way I've done it is to take the candy cups, like these that we did your samples in, and you pour a layer of chocolate, then pour a layer of peanut butter, and then pour another layer of chocolate on top. So you guys, there's so many ways to do this. That's my whole goal here for you today is you might not love this exact thing, but hopefully there's something you can take that you enjoy from all of this. So because of time, I'm not gonna we'll spread that in just a minute. We're gonna let this cool for a little bit. It's pretty warm in here, at least where I am. Is it warm for you back there? Yeah, it's kind of toasty. So this is taking a minute to set up. Usually when I'm at home and the counter is kind of cool, it'll set up a little bit faster. So usually by the time I melt one layer, spread it out, and then melt the other layer, it's ready to spread. I'm gonna let that set for just another minute so we don't end up with a huge mess. But that's the peanut butter layer. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So then the top layer, I actually did with chocolate chips, just so that you could kind of get a taste for all of them. So this is just a bowl of chocolate chips that we melted. And then we'll do the same technique, add our peanut butter to it, mix it together. So we'll get this ready, and then we'll spread as that kind of sets. One thing that I will say when you're adding 2 layers of chocolate, especially if you're going to do like a large pan of it, is to work in sections. So let's say you want to make peppermint bark. So you have dark chocolate on the bottom, you're going to add white chocolate on the top. Kind of work start at start closest to you, spread a little chocolate around, and then pour a little more on, and then more as you work along the pan. The reason why I recommend that is so that it doesn't melt while you're spreading it. So that can kind of help so you don't get like a big spot, maybe in like the middle of your pan if that's where you poured it all out. So the thing about chocolate chips, we didn't talk a ton about them. Chocolate chips, as we know, are a cute little chip shape. And the way that they're engineered is to hold that chip shape. They're not really intended to melt and be used as a dipping chocolate. So when we use them in this application, you'll see, well, those are both chocolate chips. It's going to be quite a bit thicker than if you're melting and combining with a couverture chocolate. The trick there is not to keep microwaving it. Don't keep warming it up so you get it too hot, right? If you've ever tried to dip with chocolate chips, like you melt them and then try to dip with them, they usually stay kind of lumpy. That's just the way they're made. So this like happy medium chocolate that we love is the compound chocolate. And compound chocolate, the way it's manufactured is they take out the cocoa butter and replace it with another more stable vegetable solid or fat. So usually it'll say like sunflower oil or palm kernel oil, and those are more stabilized, so you can melt them and then they'll set up correctly again, so you don't have to do that tempering process. But of course, what do you compromise on? Taste, flavor, texture, right? So like, have you enjoyed this popcorn? All compound chocolate, right? And so the application is really where we try to educate people on like, what are you making and why are you making it? If you're making it for a large quantity, then compound is great because you're going to get a really good result. If you're making it for flavor and texture, then it's worth the steps of tempering and using couverture chocolate. But in a recipe like this, if you have couverture chocolate, you're going to get the best flavor and texture out of couverture. So I would use that. If all you have is chocolate chips, am I going to tell you not to make it? No, use the chocolate chips. So I believe there's a place in the world for all types of chocolate, right? Very inclusive when it comes to chocolate. Another thing to keep in mind is like your audience, right? Like who's going to be eating this? So if you're making it for children, I mean, unless your child has like a really refined palate, I would probably just stick with compound. And that's the fun thing is, I think getting youth and kids involved in the kitchen is a really fun task, but it takes the right kind of recipe, right? You're not going to include them in something that you feel like, if you're feeling stressed about it, it's hard to invite a child to join you. So compound chocolate kind of takes away that stress, so that my kids, I can just like let them make a mess and we can enjoy it. And when they're invested in it, it's a lot more fun for them. So a couple ideas while we're waiting for those layers to set up. Will you just go stick this in the fridge? We're just going to break the rules and see what happens, okay? Some fun ideas. Have any of you converts to the Peter's Caramel Club? Yeah? Okay. So another fun thing we love to do is just dip squares of Peter's Caramel. So I'm going to show you a few techniques that will just make that a little bit easier for you. So we have some chunks cut up here. Let me just scooch over into our camera, okay? We've got a few chunks, and you can kind of vary the size. If you're really particular, you can kind of smooth them out so they're nice and perfectly rectangle. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a perfectionist, so I like things to taste good. That is where I put all of my energy, is how does it taste? And then the look is just a bonus on top, right? But I do have a few tips that will help your dipping. So one is to use a dipping fork. If you don't have a dipping fork, you can just use a regular fork, but I do love these because the tip of the dipping fork is thin, it's more narrow, so it comes off a little bit easier. You're gonna get less of a foot and less like shape when you dip with a dipping fork. So here's our technique. We're gonna just take our cube of caramel and just drop it all the way in, plunge it in the chocolate, and then I use my dipping fork and pull straight up and out. And this is what a lot of people forget to do. You want to try to let a lot of the excess chocolate drizzle off the bottom. This is going to avoid that big foot. When I pick it up, am I in there at all? No. When you pick it up, I try to kind of have a little corner that's not on the edge of the dipping fork. That's going to help pull it off of the fork when I'm ready to put it on my parchment paper. So I'm going to let that drizzle off. You can kind of scrape along the edge of your bowl here, and then ideally, if you have another fork, or you can use a knife or a dipping fork, I kind of pull the corner there, and then you can use the other fork. Can you see that? To kind of push your truffle center or your caramel. And then before you pull away, pay attention to where your fork is, because you can kind of smooth the chocolate out using the edge of the fork, so you have like a nice little finish. So compound chocolate, for the most part, is going to work great for this. I like to add like a little sprinkle or something on top. If you are using couverture chocolate, you can also dip your caramels in that as well. The nice thing about this caramel is it doesn't need to be chilled, so it's not going to cool down your bowl of chocolate really quickly. It's nice and creamy, but you can do the same thing with homemade caramels as well. One thing I will note is if there is a area, I'll just dip another one, maybe I can show you. The funny thing about caramel, so chocolate, as it hardens, it's going to condense a little bit, right? So if you've dipped caramel in chocolate and you have any area that's not covered in chocolate, caramel will like squirt out like a little worm. It's really cute, but it looks kind of funky. So just make sure that it's nicely coated. If you have any areas, then you're gonna, have caramel worms. So we'll just pull that out, drizzle it off. It doesn't tend to happen as much on the bottom, but I try to leave enough caramel on the bottom. One trick I learned from John Neal, who's teaching in the other room today, on his homemade caramels, what he does, I'll show you real quick. I don't think it's necessary with Peter's caramel because it's a pretty firm caramel, but his caramel centers are softer. So what he does is he takes every caramel center he has and he'll paint a little chocolate along the bottom and then let that set. He does all of his caramels that way, and then he dips them all so that he makes sure there's a solid layer of caramel on the bottom. You can do that same technique with any kind of truffle center. But like I said, I just usually am in a hurry, so I don't do that. But I'm happy to pass on for all of you that have time to make sure that happens. That's kind of fun.
If
Yes.
you're dipping that in couverture, does that need to be tempered?
Yes, so this would need to be tempered. Yeah, good question. Yeah, so here's what's going to happen if you don't temperature couverture chocolate. It's still going to taste good. You likely will have bloom, so that's like the little specks, or it looks like streaks. Bloom can show up either way. And the chocolate will remain soft to the touch. So if you've ever just like bought some random chocolate at the grocery store, you melt it, use it, and it's like kind of tacky, you notice your fingerprints in it, it doesn't have a snap to it, that just means your cocoa butter was not crystallized correctly, and so it doesn't harden again. And the tempering process really, we won't go into it a ton today, but the tempering process is to raise it to a certain temperature, and each chocolate's a little bit different, but it's all to the same heat temperature so that your chocolate, like all of the cocoa butter, is unstable. It's just like melty and liquid, right? And then you're introducing chocolate, or you're cooling the chocolate at a certain rate so that the cocoa butter will harden correctly again. So you get to like a certain level of beta crystals, if you like that kind of talk. That's the goal, right? And tempering it's an art. There's like a skill to it and learning how to do it, but it's also very doable. So if you're like interested in that, please look for our classes. We have workshops on tempering, and we love to teach people about it because that's like the gateway into the good stuff, right? The really good chocolate. So some other ideas. I love Oreo, and I think this is a fun thing to like let other people participate with you, whether it's children or people that are like, well, I like to eat stuff, but I don't like to work in the kitchen. We'll include them this way. So just take an Oreo. I have a bowl of white chocolate. I'm going to dip it halfway in white chocolate. Let a lot of it drizzle off so I don't end up with a big foot. And then I just put it on my parchment paper. And beep, beep, beep. We'll make a little space. And then this is super good. You can take like crushed peppermint and just sprinkle some of that on. So I'm all about sprinkles and stuff on top, if you can't tell. I think it's fun. So adding a little something to it just kind of takes something that's basic and elevates it a little more. Another fun idea is to take your caramel. I'm going to just use 2 pieces like this. I'm going to push them together and kind of make a snake out of them. And then what we'll do is twist it around my pretzel rod. So this is an alternative to like a dipped pretzel rod. Let me just scoot some of these over. Does anyone like caramel pretzel rods? Is that a thing you like? Okay. So of course you can melt the caramel, and if you have melted caramel before, maybe for caramel apples or something like that, we do recommend melting caramel in like a cast iron pot. You can do it in the oven for 2 hours at 200 degrees, but I'll be honest, most of the time I don't got 2 hours to wait for my caramel to melt. So I most often will just melt it in the microwave and use the same techniques that you do with your chocolate. You want to make sure that it doesn't get too hot and that you're doing it in small increments and stirring in between each round. So here I have my pretzel stick, and we're just gonna start the pretzel. It sticks better to itself than it does to the pretzel rod. So I make sure it kind of touches there so I don't lose my caramel. And then I'm just gonna twist it around my stick. Hi, Whitney.
Hi.
You can kind of play with how thick you want it. I did not make it go all the way down here because my bowl of chocolate is not very deep. So I wanna make sure I get it covered. But what I'm gonna do now is, and I love these silicone bowls for this reason. They're really malleable, so I can tip it this way, and then I have a nice deep well of chocolate to dip from. So then I can, without having to melt a lot of chocolate, I can just stick this in here, twist it around till it's nice and coated. Get my spatula out of the way. And then we'll just drizzle off again all that extra chocolate. You can see it just dripping its way off there. And then we'll just lay it down on our parchment paper. And I am obsessed with cocoa nibs. Does anyone like cocoa nibs? Yeah, yeah. So this is just like raw cocoa bean that they roast and then grind up. Now that is really healthy, okay? So I actually put cocoa nibs on like my granola in the morning. You can put them in smoothie bowls. They're really fun on like the top of a brownie or something. They just add like a nutty earthiness that's so delicious. So if you like, they are a little bitter. So if you like the dark side just a little bit, that's kind of fun. So there's a few ideas. We have these cute cinnamon Santas. Those are super fun dipped in chocolate. So we just plunge that in, pull it out. Do you want to grab that? Oh, you did.
Is it okay?
You're back. Yeah, that's
Is it
great.
enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
we might not get to all the layers. We'll see what happens. And then just put Santa down there. Oh, he's gonna have a big pool underneath him. If you do end up with those and you have a thin enough layer, you can just like snap off the edges when you're finished. Lots of ways to make things work. So once I've got this layer done, and it's still soft, so they should stick together well, I'm gonna microwave this really quick. I want this just a little bit softer.
So which of the many kinds of chocolate are you using for this?
Good
I mean,
question.
all the numbers and all
Yes.
the varieties. What
Yes.
are you using?
Yeah, so for this and for your sample that you're gonna try, so you have some reference, the bottom layer is Guitar French Vanilla, and this is their semi-sweet couverture chocolate. And if you wanna just try a piece of this, come up. I really like this dark chocolate. If you have like a favorite type, go with whatever you know you like. I like this one because I feel like it has a good chocolate flavor without being like overly sweet. But like every chocolatier has their own type that they really love. So that's layer one. And then we use these, I think these are Hershey's. Yeah, just Hershey's peanut butter chips. And we used, I don't know, Jiffy peanut butter. I don't know where the bottle is. Jiffy, I think. Is that a kind? Jif. Jif Skippy. Those are your kinds. I think it's Jif that's back there. And then their top layer is these Ghirardelli semi-sweet chips. Yeah. So we really just used what we had in the back. That's what we pulled out. Oh, we already got it out. Okay. So now I'm just going to spread this on here. Thank you for asking that question. That's a great one. For the dipping, I personally prefer, as a compound chocolate, the Calabo Snaps. Of the other really popular one is Guitar Peels. So there's just kind of like user preference, right? Whatever you like the best. The reason, I'll tell you why I like Snaps. Guitar Peels require you to melt it to a certain degree. So it's like partially tempering, because they changed their recipe and the oil they use requires it to be melted to 125. I don't use the peels very often because I like the flavor of Snaps better. So the Snaps are a little bit smaller. These are Snaps in the bottom of this bag. and the ones that I showed you that kind of had the, the bloom on it. So I prefer snaps just because I don't want to take the temperature. If I'm going to use compound, I don't want to take the temp. But if you like appeals, stick with that. And then as far as baking chips, I don't really have a preference. I just use whatever I've got on hand. So I know some people like swear by Guittard or they love Ghirardelli, whatever you love. So like I said, equal rights for all chocolate. So I'm just going to spread some of this on here, pour some on, and then just spread some of it around, and then I'll work my way down as that kind of settles in there. And do the next layer. If I were just doing the peanut butter centers, I just do the same thing. Just pour it right into a pan. If you want them thicker, I'll sometimes pour the peanut butter center into like a bread pan. And then my sides, or my bottom is not as wide, so then I can get like taller truffle centers. One tip, if you do want to make the peanut butter truffle and dip it yourself, is to freeze your centers before you dip them, because this center is really soft and creamy, which is what I like about it, is it's so decadent and really delicious. It melts really easily in your mouth, but that also means that it melts really easily in your bowl of chocolate. So if you're dipping those, just freeze your center first. So we spread that around.
But I do find that that brings my chocolate temp down really fast.
Yes, it does. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, good point. So if you are dipping like a cold center, it's gonna chill your bowl faster. So, okay, so then we're gonna let that set, and then we'll add the chocolate chip layer. We'll just stick that in the fridge for now. So any questions, comments at this point? Yeah.
I know that sometimes like when I dip, I put it in like the pans that you can just keep on warm.
Oh, a warming pan? Yeah.
So that you can keep your chocolate
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah, put a heating pad underneath it. Was anyone here when the chef from Guittard taught? Yeah, so he melted his in a stainless bowl, and then he would just turn on the burner and just rub it over the burner, like maybe for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And it just kept it in that nice melted temperature so that his chocolate stayed nice and the viscosity was loose enough that he could dip really well with it. So yeah, lots of options. With compound chocolate, as long as you're not burning it, you can't melt it too many times. So you can keep throwing it back in. Couverture chocolate, same thing. You can't melt it too many times, but you do, if you've tempered it, you want to keep it in that tempered range so that you don't take it out of temper by melting it too much. So those are some tips about that. Okay, when it comes to cutting we're going to run out of time to show you on the pan we made, but when it comes to cutting your truffle bars, one tip I have is to use a bench scraper. I didn't bring one in here. So it has like a long metal edge to it so that you can get a nice long cut, or you can just use like a sharp knife. But what I like to do is just pull the parchment out and just cut it directly on a cutting board. For your sample today, our wonderful volunteers made these for me and did not put the parchment paper in the bottom of the pan. So you'll notice, this is a learning experience for all of us, right? You'll notice that the chocolate on the bottom is kind of like cracked up because it wasn't on parchment paper and we had to like scrape it out of the pan. So don't forget that first step. Sometimes it's like the first thing on the recipe that nobody reads, right? Preheat the oven. You're like, well, what temperature? Yes, here's a bench paper. Thanks, Whitney. Yeah. So just make sure that you line your pan with parchment paper. I feel like parchment is like the gift of the kitchen world, right? So you don't have to scrub your pan out. But this is what I cut them up with. I just go along the pan and just do even lines. And then you have like a whole tray of truffles ready to go in a short amount of time, which is just like a kitchen win in my book when it comes to having treats to share with people. So a fun thing that we love to do is to use these candy boxes. And what I do in my neighborhood when I remember to give my gifts to people that I care about is to like have a candy box and put a few different kinds of treats in it. You could add some Oreos, the peanut butter truffles. You can add like a cellophane bag of popcorn, and then that makes a really fun homemade gift for people. So don't feel like you have to be able to give someone an entire box of something. Sometimes adding a few elements to it can make it really fun and, you know, let people know that you care about them, or eat them all yourself. Whatever you need this time of year. Yeah.
How do you make your couple of individual truffle
Oh, the peanut butter one? Yeah, so there's two options. If you're just making the center, you can cut it into squares, or you can scoop it with a cookie scoop. Like yeah, so I would let it set and get, fairly hard depending on how much peanut butter you've added. With this recipe, it's probably ready to scoop maybe like 10 minutes depending on how cold your kitchen is after you've melted it together. Let it set for a minute, and then I would scoop it and put it on a tray and freeze your centers and then dip them in chocolate. Yeah, that's a good question. Another recipe that's on there is the Oreo truffle, which if you haven't made Oreo truffles and you like simple things with really good flavor, Oreo truffles are really fun. All you do is mix a package of Oreos with a package of cream cheese, and it makes a really delicious truffle. So that's another fun option. All the details are on the blog for that as well. So, okay, any other questions, comments?
Connie.
Grapes? Yeah.
I asked Heather, she said you guys used to sell the cream cheese chocolate chips, but not anymore.
I'm so sorry. No more cream cheese. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, they stopped making them. It's so sad.
Gone. Okay. Well, I have to take that out of my brain. That's not an option anymore. Well, thank you so much for coming. We have some samples for you guys to try. And thanks for being a part of our extravaganza. It means a lot that you spend your time, and where you could be anywhere in the world, you're here today, and that means the world to us. So thank you so much.
Connie, you want